Hi, Alicia. First of all, we know you are going to have a new book published in China, Cooperative and Connected. We would like to say congratulations to you first. We're so looking forward to the new book.
Oh, thank you.
And it's a great pleasure for us to talk with you today. We know you actually have so many experiences for the past years working with parents and families from around the world. Also know you actually not only parented your children, but actively joined the parenting of your grandchildren.
Yes.
And you established this Aware Parenting Institute and wrote so many books. So my first question is, from our curiosity, how is everything so flourished come from? Where did everything come from to make you start to want to work with parents and families?
Okay, well, I have a background in developmental psychology. I studied with Jean Piaget in Switzerland, and then I came to the US and earned a Ph.D. in psychology. So I already had a really good background in child development before I became a mother. But when I became a mother, I actually encountered, really putting what I had learned into practice and trying to understand my baby. And he had a traumatic birth. I had a very, very long labor. So my baby's birth was, he was traumatized during birth. It was 2 days, 48 hours of labor. And he cried a lot. So I learned through my experience with him that sometimes he just needed to cry when I held him, and that it was a healing process for him. So when I began to understand that about crying, that crying is not always an immediate need. Okay, it's not always hunger. It's not always a need for a diaper change. Sometimes babies just need to cry in arms. And he would be so relaxed after those crying sessions that I decided to write a book about really emphasizing why babies cry. And there's research on child abuse, and most abuse happens when a child is crying. So crying is a huge trigger for child abuse. So I wanted to help parents really understand the crying of babies and children, and to know that it's not their fault. It doesn't mean they've done anything wrong if the baby cries a lot. And I was hoping to decrease child abuse. Okay, that was my original motivation for writing my first book, which is The Aware Baby, which has been translated into Chinese. You have it right here. I have a copy. Yes, you have.
I have too.
and that's the first book I wrote, and there's quite a lot of information about crying in that book. The two functions of crying: so to communicate an immediate need and to heal from trauma, such as a traumatic birth. So. But I also knew that there was a lot of other research, a lot of good research in child development that wasn't getting into parenting books. So I also included a lot of that research. For example, the research on the negative effects of punishment. There's good research on that, and yet there were still parenting books for parents are still being published that tell parents they should punish their children. And yet we know from research that doesn't really work, and it's not a good idea for many reasons. So that's another reason so that some of this research would get to parents.
Yes. Thank you for sharing us those stories that actually come, I see, from the heart of a mom, which actually connected us with the audience, I see. But when you established the institute, Aware Parent Institute, what's the key messages besides the crying is actually the healing process? what's the key messages that we want to pass through no matter the courses or your books to the parents, the most important concepts?
Okay, so aware parenting has three main aspects. So one is attachment, really strengthening the parent-child attachment. And it's an attachment-based approach. So I give parents lots of tools, lots of ideas for how to create a secure attachment. Okay, that's one aspect of it. The second aspect is non-punitive discipline, which I mentioned. So that means no punishments and no rewards. So that's the second aspect. And then the third aspect is what we talked about, helping children heal from trauma. So I give parents lots of tools, lots of information about how they can help their own children recover from traumatic experiences. And this includes, supporting their crying, what I call that emotional release. It includes supporting certain forms of play. Certain forms of play can be very therapeutic, and laughter too can be very therapeutic. So it's crying, play, and laughter included in the third aspect of aware parenting, how to help children through those techniques.
Yes. You mentioned your first baby book is Aware Baby. We see actually you raised the 4 assumptions about the babies, which I think actually it's more general for the children, right? The 4 assumptions for children.
Yes,
which are very inspiring for us to read for as a parents that help us understand our children better, because they tell a lot of the truth about our children. So can you give us some introduction about the 4 assumptions that you actually raised in the book?
Well, the first one is that we can basically, babies know what they need. They're born knowing what they need. All animals are really, we're humans too. And they communicate their needs. Human infants are very helpless and very dependent. They can't walk. They can't go to their mother when they want to be picked up and fed. So they communicate their needs, and they cry. One way that they communicate is to cry. So they know when they're hungry. They know when they need to sleep. They know when they're overstimulated. They know when they're frustrated, and they communicate those feelings and those needs. And it's our job to interpret those signals that they give, interpret them correctly, so that we can meet those needs. So that's the main basic, assumption. And the second assumption is that when their needs are met, okay, and they're not hurt or traumatized, then they will be cooperative, loving, compassionate, smart. That it just happens naturally. There's no inherent. My basic assumption is that the babies are not born bad. Okay, if they do, bad things, like if they become destructive or aggressive or uncooperative, or they hit their brother or sister, that it doesn't mean they're bad. It means they've been hurt, and it means they haven't healed yet from the hurts. So that's kind of one of the assumptions. Right? Okay, and if they don't heal, the third assumption, if they don't heal from trauma at an early age, trauma can cause lifelong consequences. Unhealed trauma early in life, because they're so vulnerable and so helpless. So that's why I teach parents to help their children heal while they're still young, while they're still babies, so they don't have later problems. because trauma actually affects the brain. It actually affects, how the brain develops. And it can actually help determine which genes will express themselves. So it has a huge impact on the brain, any trauma, any early trauma. And that can lead to later mental illness, substance abuse, alcoholism, drug abuse, depression, anxiety, violence. So all unhealed trauma can lead to later problems if children are not allowed to heal while they're growing up. Oh, and then the fourth assumption is that babies can recover from these early traumatic experiences while they're still babies. They can recover. And
yes.
That's what my books are about.
Yeah, so generally, and when you talk about babies, we're actually talking about children as a whole, that children actually know their needs, no matter what age they are.
Children.
But you want to emphasize from the very beginning, the moment that they were born. That's why I think I personally like the name of your book very much. You call that Aware Baby. It actually reminds me or us as a parent that awareness is not only something that we adults have, but from the very moment when baby is born, he or she actually has the ability to be aware. That's a great reminder.
Yes, they take in everything. I mean, we tend to think they can't talk, so we assume they're not paying attention or not noticing what's happened, or we may think they're not going to remember, but they do. And there's evidence that babies do remember highly salient and traumatic events. They do remember those later on. There's evidence for that. So they're assimilating everything. Very aware. Yeah.
Then as a parent or a caregiver, my next question would be, how can we tell if the needs of our children is met or not? Because they know, baby knows, but how can we know as a parent? Because that's so important, and that's every parent actually from the bottom of their heart.
Of course, we all want to meet our baby's needs, our children's needs. We want them to grow up, the best way possible and meet their full potential as adults. We want them to have a good life, and yet it's difficult. It's sometimes difficult to know what a baby needs. They can't say, "I'm hungry. I need to be held." So
exactly,
there's a lot of trial and error. Okay, there's a lot of experimentation, trial and error. All parents make mistakes. That doesn't matter, but as long as we're doing our best and really communicating our intention to the baby of wanting to help, I want to meet your needs. We might even say to the baby, "I don't know what you need right now. I'm trying to figure out, but I will help you if I can." And then we know, because babies whose needs are met, they're just calm and relaxed, and they connect. They will look at us. When they get older, they will smile. They will be, they'll just be relaxed in their bodies, and they will sleep well. So when babies' needs are met, it becomes pretty obvious. Okay. The confusion comes around crying, and what I talked about at the very beginning when we first started talking, the confusion about crying, because sometimes crying is not for an immediate need. And that's where it gets really confusing, because babies sometimes just need to cry, and the crying itself is a need. Okay, so that's that's when I recommend what I call the crying in arms approach. Just holding the baby, allow the crying to continue. And my books have tips, suggestions for how to interpret the crying. So it's actually the first book I wrote, The Aware Baby. It's the one I wished I'd had as a new mother. I could have used that book. Okay, so I made mistakes with my son, and so I wrote the book in hopes that other parents wouldn't make maybe not as many mistakes as I made. But even though I made mistakes, my son turned out fine, because with this approach, the nice thing about this approach is that we can also repair our mistakes. We can help our babies recover from our own mistakes, even if we've hurt them, even if we haven't met their needs, they can recover with our support.
Great to know we can still recover.
Yes.
Because otherwise there will be huge anxiety for parents.
Yes.
Oh, I can't read that the signal. I'm not expert. I cannot read. I cannot tell. I cannot accept the signal. How, if I made something mistake, how can I repair? That's a huge relief that we can still repair. How can we repair? That's my next question.
Oh, well, we can repair by just continually trying to do better and allowing our children to cry if we have hurt them ourselves. Maybe we lost our patience and yelled one day, got angry, and that hurt our baby, and that's a mini trauma, okay, in the baby, and that we can help repair that by supporting our babies crying. They may just need to cry about that while we hold them, and that's really can be very, very helpful to just allow them to express their emotions. That's the healing process. Allowing them to feel that pain, that fear. Mama is yelling at me. That's frightening for a baby, okay? But if we allow them to cry and we hold them and say, I'm sorry, I love you, and they cry in our arms, they will recover completely from that experience.
Yeah, even though we're yelling, we can still recover by letting our baby crying out of it, right?
Yes.
Aletha, thank you for sharing with us the truth. You said crying is the needs of a baby. That's that's so powerful and so straightforward when we know that crying the needs for a baby for many parents, so we know how to help our children. Yes. When we know it's needs from a baby.
It is one of many needs. The need, crying itself, can be what the baby needs. Yes. Yeah, just like adults, sometimes we need to cry, right? If you've had a hard day, or someone has hurt your feelings, or or a big trauma, someone you love has died, or there's a relationship problems. We all need to cry. We all benefit from crying, and it helps us. And babies are the same. We all need someone to hold us when we cry, don't we?
Yes, we do. But that definitely not easy for every parent, especially for father. So painful to hear a baby cry.
Did you say especially for fathers?
Fathers.
I find, some fathers have a hard time, but many mothers have a hard time too.
As well, yeah.
As mothers, if we're breastfeeding a baby, we may tend to think that every time they cry, they need to be fed. And we have the ability to do that if, we're breastfeeding, but they don't need to be breastfed every time they cry. Whereas fathers know that they can't breastfeed. And so, it's different for mothers and fathers, but I think it can be hard for both parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we talk about the four assumption of the children. Children needs to know their needs, and if children's needs are met, actually they can grow naturally in a very positive way.
Yes.
And if they are hurt, uh, that can cause the negative effects. But we can still bear in mind that there's still opportunities that children are capable to recover from the effects of the traumas with the support from the parents.
Such a lovely summary of the main ideas. Thank you for summarizing that. Yes.
Yes, that's something we know. I just know that we need to bear into the mind, actually, that will help us to become down when we face the challenge daily situations. Because as a parent nowadays, that's definitely very hard. Yes, I think those assumptions, knowing self is the truth, will be helpful for many of the parents.
Yes, I hope so. I mean, that's why I write books, because parents need information, parents need support. And it's just very hard, especially if we want to raise our children differently from the way we were raised. It's very hard to do things differently. I mean, if we were punished as children, our first reaction when we become parents, when our child does something we don't want them to do, it's almost an instinct. Our first reaction will be to do what was done to us. So if we were punished, we will automatically have an urge to punish our child. Okay, it's very difficult to change, to do it differently from the way we were treated. But it's possible, to do it differently. Yeah.
Talking about punishment, I found you are very insisted in no punishment at all, including timeout, including rewards.
Yes, that's correct.
It seems like there's a middle way. You definitely so insisted in that. Can you explain us a bit more? Because that doesn't sound like every experts or the parenting information or the knowledge we receive from all the books.
Well, there are actually more and more books that are opposed to punishment, totally opposed to punishment.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And well, there's just so much research on it. That punishment, it doesn't make children to become better people. It only has a temporary effect. And what happens with children who are punished, when they reach the age, become teenagers, they have an urge to rebel. Okay. They might rebel, and they might want to, not even be with their parents anymore, which is sad. So it can damage the parent-child connection, the parent-child relationship. And then it can lead to problems later on. It teaches children to do things for the wrong reasons, and rewards too. Rewards teach children to do things for the wrong reason. It teaches them to think about, what am I going to get out of this, rather than to think about someone else's needs or the family's needs or the whole situation. It teaches them to do things just for themselves, basically. Teach them to be selfish. And rewards can backfire. They actually reduce what psychologists call intrinsic motivation. So the more we reward a child for doing something, the more they're going to dislike whatever they have to do to get the reward. That's been studied. There's research studies. Okay, like if we reward a child for eating a certain foods, if we say, okay, you eat your spinach, and then you get reward. Then you get your ice cream later. Okay. Well, that will make children dislike spinach more than before. So it has that effect. And then you mentioned timeout. I don't recommend timeout either. So when children behave in ways that we find difficult and have behavior problems, they need connection. They don't need separation. They need connection with us. They may need information. Maybe they just didn't have enough information. Maybe they didn't know what they did was wrong or why it was wrong. Maybe they just have an unmet need that they're trying to meet. Okay. Or maybe they just have suffering from unhealed trauma, or there's stress in their lives. Maybe they're just frustrated or jealous or frightened or angry. So the whole approach. So parents ask me, okay, they say, okay, Aletha, okay, you don't recommend punishments, you don't recommend rewards, you don't even want us to use timeout. What do you do? What do you do instead? And this is, I do a full day workshop on that topic, actually. But no, the basic idea is to look beneath the surface, look beneath the behavior, and try to figure out why the child is doing what they're doing. And those are the reasons I mentioned. It's their lack of information, they have an immediate need, or they're stressed or suffering from unhealed trauma. And when we address the underlying need, the behavior changes.
Can we take an example, like if a 3-4 child years old who doesn't like the spinach?
Oh,
that's so common.
Yeah, well, I don't recommend ever using rewards to get children to eat. That's another thing where we can trust children. We can put healthy foods in front of them and they will select a healthy diet. There's studies that have been done on that. So we don't ever have to tell children what to eat. Okay. Yeah.
Just let them decide what they would like to eat.
Yeah. Yeah. That's part of this whole approach.
That's a huge trust.
It is trust. It goes back to trust, but it's based on research. Yeah.
Just let child decide what they would like to.
Yeah. Yeah. We have been, many of us adults, we've been taught to eat what we were told to eat, when we're told to eat, how to eat. And we've lost touch with our body. We've lost touch with our body's natural, instinctive feelings of what foods we really need. Many of us have lost touch with that. So we can raise children so they don't lose touch with that by not interfering with, but not rewarding them for eating, not punishing them for not eating, not trying to control their eating.
I see another assumption probably behind this is our children probably have better connection in terms of with their body compared with the adults, because we know it is healthy from mind mentally. It is healthy to eat spinach. A child just, my body doesn't like it. Let's see if there's a conflict.
There's no reason why we should eat spinach. There's no reason why a child should eat spinach. They can get nutrients, all the nutrients they need
from other vegetables
without ever eating spinach. Okay. So there's no reason why we should make children eat a specific food. I don't particularly like spinach, but sometimes eat it combined with other foods, but we have a right to have our own preferences.
Okay. You made me actually remember, yes, last night I really persuade my daughter, although it's not a force, but I persuade my daughter to eat some vegetables because it looks to me she ate a lot meat.
Uh-huh.
I persuade her, but she didn't accept that. So I told myself, okay, I still have 1 week. As long as the whole week is balanced, that will be fine. So I would just forgive the one meal.
Yeah.
And that's actually a huge release for myself.
Yes, that's really what I recommend. How old is your daughter?
10. She's 10 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, well, children naturally go on food binges. They might eat one food, prefer one food for several days, and then they prefer another food. And if it's over a week or 2 week period, they will get a balanced diet, probably.
So I didn't see great pressure.
Yeah, I'm sure she appreciated that.
I'm just trying to help myself out because,
Yes.
a 10 years old daughter is not easy to get along with.
Yeah.